So in the last meeting, we started with the discussion on strings, or what is a string in Python. We have written some small programs using certain string operations as well. Today's discussion will be focused on some built-in string functions as well as string comparison, or how we can compare two strings. Now, there are certain string functions which are built in Python. For example, one such built-in string function is capitalize. It returns a string with the first letter capitalized and all other characters lowercase. So let's just, for saving some time, let's just copy this code. If I do this, so basically, as you can see, I have declared one string str1, which is Python all small, capital IS, very all small, capital powerful. This capitalize function would actually convert the whole string into a capitalized manner. And what is this capitalized manner? It will be converting P into capital letter, or the first letter in this string into capital letter, and rest it will be converting into small letter. As you can see, is has been converted into small, powerful has been converted into small, but Python has been converted with a capital P. This is a built-in function in string. Now, something to note here is that this string, this capitalized function is not actually changing the value of str, or the string in which it is being invoked. In this line, this capitalized function is being invoked or being called. It is called with a string, in this case, which is called str1. This capitalized function is actually converting the inputs or the value that is stored in str1 into something else, but it is not actually changing the value that is stored in str1. It is just converting it and returning it. Now, as you can see, str1 was this. Now, after the second line, let's enable line number as well. So in this line 2, this capitalized function is called with the parameter str1, or str1 is being called, str1 is used for calling this capitalized function. Now, this capitalized function is not changing the str1. As you can see, after this second line, in this third line, I am printing the original string. That is this. The initial string is this. What it is doing, changing the value and returning it. But it is not actually manipulating or editing the existing value in this invoking string. And another thing to note here is this capitalized function is not taking any parameter. So this is just the function call without any parameter. It will be converting all letters except the first letter into small or lowercase, and the first letter, irrespective of whether it is capital or small in the original string, it will be converted into a capital one. Okay. Another very useful function is called count. So count basically returns the number of occurrence of certain substring in a given string. So let's consider this string, this sample code snippet. Okay, so here I am declaring one string as a string in Python. I am declaring another string. The variable name is substring, which is in, and I am counting, or I am calling this count function on this string with this substring. So what this line is doing is basically it will be counting the number of occurrence of this substring in this string, or in this case, it will be calculating the number of times this in is occurring in this string, a string in Python. Now, if I execute this, you can see the count is 2. Why? Because one in is here, another in is here. So using this count function, we can compute the number of substrings or some number of occurrence of a substring in a string. So of course, we can count the number of, say, letters, number of occurrence of a certain letter as well. Like if I check the number of occurrence of, say, I, it will be printing us 2 because this is I, this is I, again for both of the I's. And let's consider another thing. Let's modify the actual string. Now, the actual string is a string in Python. str is the class name. As I have said, in Python, everything is associated with a class. That is, every variable that we'll be declaring will be an object of a certain class. In string, str is basically the class name. So that's exactly what I've written here. Okay. Now, if I compute the occurrence of number of s, note that capital S, it will be computing only 1, although there are small s as well, like here, right? Now, if I change it to, say, small s, it will be computing the occurrence of small s as well. Not actually as well, but it will be computing only the occurrences of the small s's. So S, S, and these two s's. That's why 4s. Note that 4 small s. So now we can say that count will be computing irrespective, basically considering the case of the occurrence of the substrings. Now in English there are capital small, but in other languages like, say, Hindi or Bengali, there are no uppercase, lowercase. So in those cases, it will be just computing the substring. So in simple word, we can say it will be computing a basic overlap, whether this thing, whether it is a string or anything else, it will be computing or it will be calculating the occurrence or overlap of this thing in, how many times this is occurring or overlapping in this thing, in this larger thing, which is a string in this case. Okay. So another built-in string function is title. So title will be basically converting all the letters, let's consider this as the input. So all the words, the first letter of all the words as capital. So if I call this string function with, call this string function title on this this input string, you can see it is printing a string in Python. Now this was the input string that is being used to invoke this function or call this function. Now it is converting all the first letters in all the words as capitals. S is the, so all the words in the all the words are basically capitalized. So we can say earlier the capitalized function was actually converting the first letter of the input string as input, given as input into uppercases. But here title is them. So now you may ask that how Python is actually understanding whether I'm actually ending with the, continuing word or not. In this case, it is basically considering this space. If I give multiple spaces, it will not be a problem. Now, what if I give, say, a full stop here and there is no space in between? In this case also, it will be considering. So basically, this full stop will also be considered as the ending of a word. So after every ending of a word, the new word will be starting with a capital letter if we call this title function. Okay. Another very useful function is replace, which can replace a string or the occurrence of a substring inside a string. So the replace function we will be discussing later on. It is a very useful one. I'm not going into the details now. Replace function, as I have said, will be basically replacing the number of occurrences of a substring in a string. So like this count function, the replace will be basically, replace will be taking two parameters. One is the existing one that you want to replace, and the second will be the string that you want to replace with. So we will be discussing the replace function later on. Now there are two other functions that are also will be useful at some point of time. They were upper and lower. So let's again copy the same thing and let's look at how they are actually useful. So now if I do this and if I call the string with this upper function, it will be converting, as you can understand from the name of the function, it will be converting all the letters into uppercase. Similarly, there is this lower function, which will be basically converting all the letters into lowercase. Now again, yes, question.
So you said that in this everything computer stored data in 0 and 1, right?
Right.
So how does it discriminate between small, like capital letter and small letter?
Good question. So give me 5 minutes and I'll be coming to that. There is a discussion on that. I have planned on discussing that. I was expecting that question, so I already planned answering that. Thanks a lot for actually asking this. We'll be discussing this in 5 minutes max.
Okay.
So one thing I would like to highlight here again is that the actual string is not actually being converted. So I can actually replace this thing. So this string is already declared here. Now this function is basically, converting the values, but it is not changing the existing variable. It is basically returning. So now if after calling this, if I print the string, which is the name of the string variable here, you can see it is remaining the same. Now, what if I want to store the output? What if I want to store this output somewhere? In that case, basically what I need to do is I basically need to declare another string or string variable, and I need to basically call this function now. So it will be not providing any immediate output, as you can see. Now, if I want to print the value, it will be, we'll be getting the corresponding output. So the bottom line is where the invoking string is not actually being converted, or in other words, the existing value remains in the invoking string. And if we want to store the changed output into some other variable, we can do that like this using this assignment operator. Similarly, likewise, in this lower is also similar. Now, another function is called casefold. So from the name again, you can understand that casefold is, so basically string is being converted into lowercase. So what if, so to discriminate, so from here you can see lower, if I execute this again, you can see lower and case fold are giving the same output for a given string. Now, is there any difference? Actually, there is a difference between case fold, this case fold string function, and this lower string function. Let's consider the German word Die Straße. So this basically means the street in German. Now you can see there is a beta-like character which is basically called sharp S, which is equivalent to double SS. So in German, this Straße is basically the street, and it is equivalent to STRASSE. So in German, they used to use this beta-like character to specify this kind of double SS at certain point. I mean, depending on their context, they use this beta-like character, which is basically sharp S. Now, I am saying that this Die Straße and are same. But if we compare them, so if I just execute them and if I just print the values, you can see this is the S1 and this is the S2. Now, if I convert, say, S1 dot lower, and if I print, say, S2 dot lower, whether I'll be getting the same output or not. The thing is, will not be getting the same output. In the first S1, as you can see, only this S has been converted into this. Now, as I have said, this is basically this, but they are not actually being converted into the same thing. So for this kind of cases, this case fold function is actually useful. Now, if I call the case fold function here, we will be getting the same output. Now, if I execute, you can see we are getting the same output. Now, why I am showing this example? Because consider you are visiting some German website, which is basically considering all the, let's consider you are developing one application that will be handling this kind of characters as well, right? But let's look at our, I guess some of you are having one keyboard in front of you. If you look at your keyboard, you will not be finding this character in your keyboard. It is basically a German layout. A German layout is basically, our keyboard layout is QWERTY. Their layout is basically QWERTZ. And there is a certain designated beta character or this double S character or sharp S character in German layout. But if we want to kind of give this flexibility that without providing this thing, it will be compared with this, that is, this and this will be considered same. In that case, the case fold function will be much more applicable than lower. So in sum, case fold will be converting hard and fast lower casing in case the input is something like this. Okay. There are other two functions, that is upper and is lower.
Sir,
Yes, question.
does this only work for German language?
This is I'm giving you as an example. But other accented languages like French and all, frankly speaking, I haven't checked with them, but expected that it will be working, but with the accented words like double dots above some A or O, it is, I mean, it will not be working. Why? Because they map to certain characters, which is not actually a composition of these two characters or two characters like this. So for those cases, I have checked that those things, I mean, at those places, it will not be working. This case fold will not be working. But for German, I know this actually works. But I mean, feel free to experiment at your end, of course. As you can understand, as I have said, Python supports all human written languages. So it's actually not possible to look up everything at one's end. Whatever you are thinking of, just try it and let us all know what you are getting. In that case, we'll be actually learning from your experience. Okay. Thanks a lot for asking this question. It is actually a relevant question, whether it is actually applicable for German or not. In this case, it is, I mean, coincidentally, this is German. That's why it is working. But it is, let me tell you this feature is not built focusing on only on German. That is true. So it is something, I mean, German character like this sharp S character is actually being, useful here, but the application or when the function casefold was built, it was not meant for only this kind of character. I know only certain words in German, that's why I know this. But I don't know any other languages, so that's why I'm not sure whether it will be applicable for those cases or not. Okay. Okay, so the other two functions that I'll be talking about is upper and is lower. So let me tell you this, any function starting with this is will be returning a Boolean value. So is upper will be returning true if all the invoking of, all the letters in the invoking string is in capital letter. Otherwise, it will be returning false. Similar to is lower. In that case, it will be returning a true value if all the letters in the invoking string are in lowercase. Otherwise, it will be returning a false value. So let's look at this example. So let's just, so modified string is actually, let's just, so if I print the value of modified string, it is all caps. Now, if I call the is upper function on this, so what I need to do is I need to modified str dot is upper, and it will be returning a true value. Why this is doing so? Because all the letters in this string are in capital letter. Now you might be wondering, what if I invoke the same function is upper or is lower in some languages where no uppercasing, lowercasing is actually possible, like Bengali or Hindi. Feel free to try that at your end. Okay. And now if I call this again with is lower, it will be returning false. Now let's just say check the value of S1. I think it is containing this. Now if I call this, say, is upper, with this it will be returning false, because as you can understand, S is, let's print the value of S as well. So this is not all upper, and if I change it to lower as well, it will be returning false, because this is not all lower, because there is this capital S character. Okay. Now we can call multiple functions together as well, like s1 dot, let's case fold it, and then is lower. Now you can see it is returning true, because s1 dot case fold is basically, so if I just print the s1 dot case fold as well, so s1 is this, s1 dot case fold is this, and on that s1 dot case fold I am calling this isLower function. Now it is returning true. So this kind of thing is also possible in Python. So I am calling this isLower function on this output, and this output is basically another function. A function calling is there, which is case fold, which is being called on this s1. Okay. So the last built-in function that I will be discussing in today's class is split. There are plenty of other string functions that we will be encountering later on, and we will be discussing those string functions then. So this split function is a very useful one. So this split function, as you can understand from the name, it can actually split the input string into different, basically different words or different substrings. So let's just copy this. So it is already there. Yes, so let's use this as an example. So you can see, so the string is this. So the string, this string is containing this, basically this word, basically two sentences. Now, as I have said, this upper and lower function actually converts all things. But this title function or this capitalize function is actually called on, let's focus on this title function. This title function will be converting, I mean, if I just call string dot title, it will be converting the first letter of all the words into capital, right? Now, how will we be understanding whether we are getting one new word or not? Now, to do that, what we need to do is basically we need to split this up into different words. Now we know that presence of a space is basically an indication of the end of a word, right? Now what we can do is, let's call L equals to, I'll be coming to what L is referring to, string dot, let's delete this. So if I execute this, there is no immediate output as such from this, as you can understand. So what this is doing is, this is splitting up this, the input string into a set of, or in formal term, a list of words. Okay. Now this splitting by default will be happening based on the presence of a space. Now if I just print the L or the list, it will be, as you can see, it is returning a list of all the words. Now note that the full stop is also included here. It is just cutting. It is just cutting the input string. So it is considered, I mean, it is getting one space here. So it is just cutting this, and it is putting the words up to the occurrence of this space into a list, and then again string, then again a space. So this string is put inside this list, and so on. Now here I have only basically I haven't specified any parameter here or any variable parameter here, so which is indicating the default splitting parameter, which is space. Now that's why you can see this full stop is also being included here. Now, what if I want to basically split it up, split this this string into different sentences. So this basically this and this. In that case, I need to split it up on the basis of this full stop. So in that case, I just need to provide here full stop. So let's just copy this in a new cell. And now if I print L, you'll see the output is a string in Python, which is basically the presence of this has been cut. Then, as you can see, this is the first thing. This is the second thing. Note there is a space before this. So basically, the presence of this full stop is basically the indicator of cutting of this string. So the space before the str is being included up to this E. So this is the second item in this list after splitting. And as you can see, there is a space, there is a full stop at the end. So every cutting will be resulting into two separate substrings. So for this full stop, the two substrings are this, and the rest. Now, based on the presence of this full stop, the resulting two substrings will be this and this empty string, which is this. Okay. So this is a very useful function. One of the application of split is like this. So let's take multiple inputs at a time. So if I want to, so far we have what we have. We need to use this input function, right? Now this input function will be taking a string as input, as you can remember. Now, using this split function, we can actually take multiple inputs. How we can do that? Now, I have actually written this code. So to save some time, I have actually copied the same thing here. So here, as we can recall, this will be taking one input as string from the user. And this split will be splitting the input up on the basis of the presence of space. Now, if I execute this, enter two values. Let's give two values, say 1, 2, 3, space 4, 5, 6. If I press enter, you can see the first input is 1, 2, 3. Second input is 4, 5, 6. So using this split function, as I have said, we can save one input function calling. As I have said, every function calling will be taking some time, although a tiny bit of time, but we can save a fraction of seconds or very nano fraction of seconds by using this kind of functions, specifically in this case, this split function.
Hello.
Yes, question.
Yeah. So here we can also use an array for saving the split. I mean, what we are getting after split.
Correct. So that's exactly what I have said here. So this split is basically returning a list. So as we haven't discussed what is a list here or a list in Python, so I haven't gone into the details of that. So you're absolutely correct. This is basically similar to array. So when we'll be discussing list, we'll be saying and we'll be discussing that there is no as such array in Python. The equivalent thing in Python is called list. So this is basically the bottom line is this function split will be returning a list. A list for the time being, you can consider a list is as a specified. We can understand that a list will be a set of items. Note that these items can be anything. It can be an integer, it can be float, it can be strings, it can be some other lists as well. So the list will be a set of this ordered collection of items. So they are actually ordered. So we'll be looking at those details later on during the discussion on lists. Okay. So now, if we want to say add these two numbers, so if I do something like this, summation, so if I, if I add, say, now x and y is containing this 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, right? Now, if I print x plus y, what is the expected output? Can someone say?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Correct. Because here x and y are basically the strings. So what we need to do is we need to typecast them in order to basically get the desired output if we actually want to perform this addition. Now, without this typecasting, it is basically concatenation operator. As we have said in the last class, in string, this plus operator will be considered as the concatenation operator. Now, if I want to actually add them, add these numbers, we need to actually typecast them using this int function. Now, how to compare the strings? So we can compare the strings using the operator, the comparison operator that we have discussed during the discussion on literals, or comparing literals, comparing variables. Now, one thing I would like to highlight here is strings are compared based on the lexicographical order or the dictionary order. So that is, if I declare, say, S1 equals to A and S2 equals to, say, B, and if I print, so if, say, S1 is greater than S2, A is greater than B, and else, say, print less than B. Now, if I execute, you can see A is less than B is being printed. Why? Because A is actually before B in the dictionary, right? In the dictionary, it starts with A. So if I compare, so this is basically equivalent to A is greater than B or not. So we know that A is before. So that's why we can consider, I mean, if I use some kind of mechanism to map A into, say, for example, say 97, and map B into, say, 98, we know that 97 is not greater than 98. So that's why it is called lexicographical order or dictionary order, based on which this comparison is being done. Now, if I have another S3, which is, say, A, so if I compare, if S1 is equals to S3, print S1 and S3 are same. You can see S1 and S3 are same being printed. So we can use this same equals to operator here as well to compare two strings and to compare whether it is greater than or less than or greater than equals to less than equals to. They will be considered in the dictionary order. Now, one thing I have highlighted here is this. If I map A into 97 and B into 98, it will be easier to understand, right? Because we know that 97 is not actually greater than 98. That's why this statement is being printed, because this thing is false. Now, what is this? If you recall a bit, you can remember that I have already mentioned that all the values or all the things in computer are stored in a numerical form, and this mapping is basically the responsibility of that encoding. The encoding is responsible for converting all these values into their corresponding numerical value, right? So now coming back to your question. So basically, there is an one-to-one correspondence between all the characters in human written language into its corresponding numerical form. So your specific question was how the computer is understanding whether it is a capital A or a small a. The answer is basically there is a function called ORD, which we'll be discussing tomorrow, which will be actually giving us the output, or will be basically providing us the corresponding mapping of a letter or a character. So if I give, say, so I'm saying that, so let's just print the corresponding thing associated with A. We will be getting 97. And if I do the same thing on, say, capital A, we'll be getting 65. Now, what are they? This is basically the Unicode character associated with A or small a. In other words, basically A is stored inside computer memory in some form of this 97. So A is, I mean, we are looking at them as A, but as I have said, while printing, everything will be converted into this kind of things. I mean, this kind of characters, but inside they are actually stored like this, using this Unicode character. So when we are typing, we are giving the raw input. The raw input is being converted or encoded in formal term into this Unicode characters or Unicode values, not characters, sorry. These Unicode characters we are giving as input, they are converted and they are being stored. And when we are printing them, they are again decoded into the corresponding Unicode character. Similar to this capital A, the corresponding Unicode value is basically 65. And using this ORD function, we can actually get the corresponding Unicode value associated with a Unicode character. Now, these are some of the useful Unicode mapping. 65 to 90 is associated with capital A to capital Z. 97 to 122 is basically associated with Unicode characters small a to small z. And of course, another thing is 0 is not actually 0. 0 is 48. So everything, as I have said, everything, if we consider them as a string, it will be stored in using this Unicode value. So 0 as a string is basically having the Unicode value 48, and 9, so 48, 49 up to 57. Now you can say, I mean, you can also.
Hello.
Yes, question.
So I have a question.
Yes,
so these are the ASCII values actually.
Good question. Again, those of you who had some programming knowledge, you can map them on the ASCII characters as well. You are correct. These are actually the ASCII values as well. But as I have said, Unicode is basically an extension of ASCII. Unicode supports all the human written language, whereas ASCII supports only English. Right? So, of course, the English characters will be having the same Unicode value as ASCII values. So that's why 65 ASCII value is also associated with A. So for English characters as well as, I mean, from 0 to 255, basically all these 256 characters will be associated, or all these 256 unique same Unicode character or the ASCII character. 0 to 255, all these 256 characters. Clear? So yes. Another function which is kind of the reverse of ORD is basically called CHR. So this is again, so ORD is again a function that is inbuilt in Python. CHR is again another function which is inbuilt in Python. If I give say 104, it will be converting basically it will be taking the parameter as a Unicode value, and it will be converting it into the corresponding Unicode character. So let's just print this. we are getting small h. And if I just to confirm, if I just print the Unicode value of h, we'll be getting 104, sorry, the same. So this is two functions which are kind of reverse of each other. CHR will be converting a Unicode value into its Unicode character, and ORD, given one Unicode character, it will be converting into its corresponding Unicode value. Got it? So using these two functions, we'll be actually making one CAPTCHA generation system. So we already know what is a CAPTCHA. So using all these functions, we'll be doing, we'll be building up a system like this in the next class. Because if we start this today, it will be taking around half an hour to discuss this. Okay? Any question? So today we have discussed string comparison. We started with different string functions. We discussed focusing, also discriminated between lower and case fold. We discussed about the application of split in taking multiple inputs at a time. And we started the discussion on string comparison. We'll be continuing the discussion from here in the next class tomorrow. Okay.